It was awful.
I was not a fan.
Wasn't too bad.
Talk
You know
about
what, though?
design. My car was not designed well for snow.
Jaime,
What's up?
we got Jamie.
It's true. We do have Jamie.
Hello, I am Jamie, not Jaime.
I'm gonna be so confused in this one. Speaking of design,
Who
that name was
designed my
designed
name?
awful.
Yeah, honestly.
It's literally 2 letters different. I mean, not even different. It's just switched.
Switched around. There's also like someone put Jaimie, and I was like, I don't know where you
That's
got
way
that
confusing.
from. Yeah, honestly.
That's-
Jayme. It's always doing it.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you made it, man.
Yeah.
That's cool. We've been wanting to do this episode for a little while too.
I am excited to be here. All I do is design everything outside of my life at work.
Fair enough.
Right.
What do you like to design specifically?
Music, sounds, different frequencies. I make my own kicks, which
What?
would also be designing.
Like shoes, kicks, or like beats?
No, like doom kicks.
Fair enough.
That'd be cool if I made my own shoes, but I don't know. I'm like colorblind, so I feel like if it's not all black, it might just look funky. Black and like a little bit of white.
Is that black and white to you or black and white to me?
Well, if it's black and white to me, I like to hope it's also black and white to you. Who knows?
Who knows?
Gray's kind of pink.
Jaime,
What's up?
Jamie's shoes just came
Oh
out,
my
and they're
goodness.
a mixture of green and some weird puke.
Oh.
But he thinks it's black and white, so just tell him it's black and white. I'm just kidding. They're black.
Puke colored.
I just said green and then puke, so isn't that the same thing? Or like grosser kind of green. Speaking of design.
I mean, colors are also an interesting thing because I've seen like mustard. I've seen like 86 different versions of yellow, like banana yellow and mustard yellow. A
So
lot
do you
of
notice the difference between them? Like significantly or slightly?
So with shades, it's a hit or miss really. But
Okay.
with like main colors, like Roy
Like
G.
primary
Biv,
ones?
primary colors are a little bit better once it starts getting like violet or that weird red, brown, pink color. I don't know I forgot what that color is called. Burgundy. That is just like it's like a mud. It looks like dirt. Like, I don't know. It's sad. It's sad because like colors are cool, and I also like designing. Not necessarily designing, but like I guess designing the layout of my room. I feel very affected by like how everything is laid out, like the
like
feng
your
shui.
feng
of
shui,
it.
yeah.
For sure, 100%. And like my studio is my room also, so I have to like make it so I can be comfortable like it as a bedroom, and also where I can like really just
It
sit
as
down
an
and focus
office
and
or a
do-
workspace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's hard to find that balance between it because like my desk and then my TV and then my Xbox is right there. So I'll like be in the studio or doing homework, and it's just kind of like I also have the Xbox on, so it's still trying to find that
That's
balance
funny.
in between the two.
Because I'm consistently talking to my girlfriend and joking with her now because I know that it's like little things like that's a weird color. Like for example,
Right.
that's white. No, that's eggshell white. I'm like, I can't tell the difference. Come
Honestly,
on,
like
seriously.
opaque white.
Right. But that's one of the things that I've always researched, and especially being in art school,
Right.
was all the different types of color there is. Even though some of us
Can't really
like
distinguish them.
guys to girls or just colorblind or not like can and can't distinguish it. But those come in handy though a lot too. Like even at work, like
And I think it really comes into when you start really paying attention to those things and like really like when artists who paint, they like when you first paint you only really think about like the primary colors, but I feel like as you progress through it you just start like noticing these different shades like outside of just what your arsenal of painting
Right.
is. And I feel like it's also interesting with like training your ear musically from like an outsider's perspective of someone who just listens to music.
Yeah.
They have like a range of being able to hear like the volume change in decibels, and I think it ranges about like 10 to 12 decibels is what you can hear, like was when you start hearing like the difference in volume, or maybe it's like 6 to 7. I feel like 10's a little drastic, but when you train your ear more, it goes down to like being able to detect between like the change of 1 to 3 decibels, and so it's just like learning that technique and just being there with it for so long, I feel like really helps kind of like shape your eye
yeah, that's a good point.
and ear.
Because I noticed, because I took a lot of music classes as well
Right.
as my electives, because that helps us in game design to,
Okay.
if we understand, because I graduated under the title of like 3D generalist. Now I can't even remember
Right.
what I graduated under, but that lets me hit all aspects of 3D,
Okay.
but also like
which
I,
is also sound incorporated
yeah,
too.
which
That's cool.
definitely, because I know the game engine, so I need to know how the music and sound works with the game engine. Like I was telling you earlier, like the game engine we used like 16-bit wave files
Right.
specifically, 16-bit wave, right? And it's just like it's picky.
Which
it
is
just needs that.
that's interesting because I feel like what is the standard compared to that?
Right. Well, I mean, it's like, isn't it like 24-bit? 1440 or not 1440?
44
or 100? 44 or 1, yeah.
hertz.
I
Right.
feel like that's
But-
normal, but I don't know. I'm not an expert at it, but
Right.
like even when I used to have the band and stuff, we had all the equipment for it. We had a 16-channel board. We had all the mics, like the mics we're using now, or the part
Did
of
that record in 16-bit also?
It didn't record. It was just
Okay,
a live.
okay.
It was just for live.
Oh, right.
But like I didn't know exactly what everything did and why, but I was able to utilize it until I got into those classes
And
where
then you're like, I
he was like,
was
this is
touching
what
all
this
of these
does. This is what
things.
phantom power is. I'm like, oh crap, that's cool. So I had
Yeah.
I actually thinking of it, I have a mic that
Phantom
uses
power
phantom
I didn't
power.
realize how important it was until they're like, if you don't have it on for these certain mics, they will break. And I was just like, wow. That
Or if you
is
have them on
extreme.
for certain mics, they'll break too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like these ones, these don't need phantom power,
No, definitely not.
which is it's just super
nice
funny.
condenser mics.
Yeah, they're nice. I like them.
Yeah.
What do you
Color
think, Jaime?
coded.
They were all right.
He doesn't care.
They're all right. He's like, I don't care about mics.
Speaking of
these are my
colors-
my life.
Right. Speaking of colors, like even like little things like color coordinating.
I can definitely tell the difference between these for sure. These are substantially different.
Right.
For
It's
sure.
cool. It's cool. But like for me, it's something as small as a color marker. Like for example, I know orange and orange mixes onto the board with orange. So I'm like, oh, this is definitely you. And before I would have just thrown stuff on there and been like,
Right,
what
and
mic
been
is
like,
this? I don't know. Follow
Turning
the
everything
wire
up and down
until it
right,
works.
tracing
Yeah.
it. Or
Right.
like one of those old games that has like 5 different paths you can follow and only one of them is right.
Exactly.
Man, what happened to those?
They're still there. We actually learned something really cool in our game design, speaking of design,
Right.
called the illusion of choice,
Okay.
where the player's given 5 choices, but in the end you still head up to the end, to the same spot.
They all take like different routes to the same end goal, essentially.
And
so
that helps
it-
us design a game so that we're not making like an unlimited amount of paths, which will
Right.
never get finished and developed.
Like
to
Kingdom Hearts. There's
Right.
unlimited amount of paths of treasure
Right.
chests that just go nowhere.
that we may think it's unlimited, but in the end it
it
still
all has one unison
goes to
endpoint.
the same point. Yeah.
It's
So there's
fair.
like it's cool because you lead people down this certain path that you want them to take, but subliminally, which
It's
is
like
I think
them
where
making it them,
Yeah,
making
absolutely.
the choice themselves.
And then they
it's like
feel
giving
more
them
accomplished.
freedom. Yeah, right. Because they're like, I discovered this way that is like a secret hidden pathway, but like really you're just like, I'm gonna make this a secret hidden pathway.
right? And then they take it and you're like, oh, you would have missed it. You still would have made it to the same
Right.
point without it or with it, regardless.
Right.
But it was stuff like
Got
that
you to
though.
see something cooler, different.
Yeah, exactly. Or there's
at it in a different
there's,
way.
was it we used to put incentives. Our teacher always taught us about. It's like, why do you want the player to go that way? Is it more dangerous? Is it not? Is something at the end that they really want that you couldn't get if you didn't go this path? Like stuff like that, right?
And
Or
is that
even
like
dead
where
ends.
the elements of like incorporating hidden treasures and different like things on the map that are interactive that aren't necessarily
Easter
part of
eggs
the
are a big
story,
thing like
exactly.
that. Like, yeah, if you only go in that certain path, you'll find
Right.
an Easter egg or something that references things. But yeah, exactly. It's just stuff like that, and it
And
goes.
so, when you think about like designing a game and like levels, do you? I don't know. This might be off topic, but like, do you think about like having the area that you go in as like a replayable area, or like one through is like that's the one opportunity you have to like get those Easter eggs, or is it like
That is an
the
awesome question.
replayability of
So when we were taught about it, there's multiple layers that go into designing a game before we even start modeling.
Right.
And so like with me and him, he's my level designer. So what we would do is we would make it's called a game document, game design document.
Okay.
We wrote down everything we wanted. So here's the title. Here's what it's kind of
Right.
based on. Here's what type of game it is. Here's the kind of levels we're going with. So that's like our script almost.
right?
And then once we got that part down, now we're doing levels, and then we do a level design. So we draw the level itself, and we tell like this is a point of interest. Here's where weapons, here's where ammo, that kind of stuff, spawn
Right.
points, everything. as detailed as possible on this piece of paper.
Like essentially like an EPK for that game,
Sure.
which is like the artist version of this is everything that I've done and all of my accomplishments, and in a nice little presented folder for you.
Yeah, kind of. It's more of a blueprint, I guess.
That makes more sense.
I don't know what that was. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just
But-
try to relate everything to music.
No, that's
it's a
fine. Because
problem.
that's how your brain works, and ours is game. Like it's exactly the same concept,
Yeah.
except it's just in a different medium.
Right.
So yeah, it's something similar to that. The cool part about it though was that once we start level designing, like when we first made our biggest level we had was the space station that we made.
Okay.
Right. And I drew it out, everything like that, and then
So
we,
do you start with like pen and paper?
Oh, yeah.
drawing out the map?
yeah,
Wow.
totally. It's archaic. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
Right? Because we thought at first like, oh no, we just start going in
Yeah,
there,
because I figured
laying
with,
things
well,
out.
I figured with like just this shift into like digital animation with everything,
Mm-hmm.
that it would just be like you on an iPad or something drawing it out like
Right.
that.
I mean, we could draw it like
Right.
Photoshop or whatever. We could do it that way, but either way, it's still like a flat surface, and we're still drawing it out
Right.
from like a top view. But we also have side views and stuff to kind of give like height
Right.
dimensions. Like, yeah, this one's gonna lot higher than this spot
Textures
here.
and
Yeah,
stuff into it.
it's awesome. It's really cool. We learned a lot out of it, but it was just like it's just our blueprint
Right.
of how it's gonna be laid out. So we designed that, and then he started. Gray boxing is what it's called, so it's like our first layout of it.
Okay.
So like for you, it'd be like your base layer of your audio, whatever.
Right. My process is all I start with the drums first.
There
I
you
always
go.
start with the beat.
So that would be like our gray boxing.
Right.
So it's just all just primitive objects representing what's supposed to be there. And
Blotches of gray and
yeah,
stuff.
gray squares. That's all it is.
Awesome.
And,
Gray squares and gray circles.
Some people call it gray boxing, but we always
Okay.
taught it. Or some people call it white boxing, but we call it gray boxing. And
be edgy.
right, it's super just like here's a square, here's a square, here's a square,
And
it's
here's your
supposed to be
square
that.
little guy.
Right. Then we'll go through it
Walking
again
through your
and start
square
adding
world.
the textures.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, we just made
Softening everything
Minecraft.
up.
Holy crap.
Is that they just like skip the finishing part of the design? They were
You
like,
just put the
just
textures
keep it
on the
square.
box
Yeah,
itself.
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we don't have the budget for it.
Yeah, it's fine. Leave it pixely. It looks pixely. That's what it's supposed to be. It's fine. It's by
Yeah, I
design.
mean, it's-
That's the term we were taught too. It was like, is that supposed to be there? And some of the students would be like, yeah, totally. And so our teacher would be like, oh, so it's by design. So we picked up on this term, like, yeah, that's by
design.
design. We do it that way because it's by design.
So my little random blip sounds is by design.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
decided-
You totally use that. It's but that's what we were kind of taught was like, is that by design? Yeah, it's totally by design. Because there are certain things that are weird that maybe our teacher wouldn't understand, or the player, or like, why is that like that?
Right.
For example, have you ever walked down a path and you're like, those rocks look a little bit off, a little different, and you find out later you can get through it and there's something
Right.
hidden behind it? It's by design.
It's also like when you have to advance to a certain part of like the game to acquire a certain power up or something to go back to it.
Yeah.
Like those I always thought were, man, I don't think I was ever gonna be able to get those just because by the time I got to that power up, I'd like forget that I had all these other things to backtrack
Right.
on, and like games like God of War, which are generally linear, but you can't
Which is funny.
necessarily like it's a mission to go back to somewhere you've already
Right.
been, but it's like a linear game, but you can still go back, but it's like not the easiest way to travel. You can't like pick a point on the map and just fast
Right.
travel there. So it's
Then sometimes you can, but like for that
Right.
example, yeah. But then that leads back to what you were saying earlier, replayability. So now we spent all this time making this level, right? And it's like, are we going to see it once? Are we going to see it twice? Or do you have to go back like a central hub? So
and then
that's
is
where
it
that
gonna be,
comes
like,
in,
a larger boss there the second time you run through it.
right? Where they run into freaking Loki or Thor or whatever, or
Okay.
like however kind of the new God of War was.
Right.
But like that's with us. We started designing it. He started laying out the gray box for it. Found out it's huge. Our little guy took forever to run across the map. We're like, okay, this is too big, or
Right.
that's too narrow, or this is weird, that kind of thing. So then we started
Expanding
cutting out,
outwards.
editing, like I think we had like 5, like the central hub and like 5 other areas that we ended up
Right,
just
right.
like taking off and just making it one big area. All right, cool. That ended up working
Right.
better. Then we're able to lead the player through the certain areas that we want. But what that reminds me of though is kind of our at work, our layout there. Do you ever think about it? Like really think about it?
It's like modeled after a Doom game I played back in the 90s.
It could be, totally could be. I've always wanted to model our store and make it into a game. For example, like a race game where you're
Ooh,
racing
that
through
would be cool.
produce and like apples and shit are falling all
Right.
over you.
Oh, it could be like where you get shrunken down and you have to like race in these little go-karts around the
Right,
store or something.
I imagine that all the time. Where like the different maps will
Gotta
be
keep
like
it fun.
the departments, for example.
Right.
That would be cool. But do you ever wonder why we put the milk in the very back corner of the store?
No.
It makes the customer go through our store before
To
they
get
get
to
to
the
it.
milk because they're always going to be shopping for milk.
Every grocery store is laid out that way. Think about it. The milk is in the back farthest corner.
It really is. That's weird.
Weird, right?
But I guess that is like on the idea of for sure design of they specifically made it that way to control people to like go that specific way.
Well, then think about it too. Like, so you walk into the front door. What's the first thing you see?
At home?
At our store
Oh,
or not at home? Sorry, I mean at like a grocery store, for
Over my
example.
head. Vegetables,
Okay, more specifically though.
shopping carts,
What size?
the really big ones,
Exactly.
the monster. Oh, man, have you seen the shopping carts at Walmart?
Yes, they're
Crazy. You could fit like 5 kids in there. It's
exactly.
stupid.
So that's a part of the design. It's by design.
Right. Oh, because
so
they
for-
want you to
fill
it
up the
with more
basket. Because if you
things.
say, for example, say me and you go into a store, you have a hand basket, and I have the big Walmart one, right?
Right.
We both only want like bread, milk, cheese, cereal, and whatever, right? I go in, you put those 5 things in your basket,
And I'm like
it's
set.
almost full. You're like, okay,
You're like,
cool.
this is heavy. I can't
Good.
even do anything.
And it'll
with
make you
this.
think twice about getting that 6th item because you're like, it's not gonna fit. I don't really want to
Right.
carry it. To me, I'm like, my basket, like, I have a
Like,
ton of room.
I'm
Like,
pushing it around.
I
I'm
won't
not
think
even
twice about it. Yeah,
exerting
it's fine.
any energy.
Throw it in. That, but like, what do you think of the design? So at our store, they have the tiny little red cards.
Like the ones for babies.
Yeah. Think about that. So they design these tiny carts, right? Which makes multiple things happen. One, the kids want
Has a
like,
cart.
are we going to the store? Like, yeah, can we go to the one with the tiny carts?
Right.
So that brings them to
To
us
us.
compared to like King's or
King
Walmart.
Soopers yeah, exactly.
Right?
And
So,
then
like-
also it puts like the control in the child in a way. And because we know the kid is just gonna grab all the sugary things, and like if it was a bigger cart,
Which is why we put them where?
on the bottom shelf.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Crazy, right?
I just blew my own mind.
Just blew my whole mind. But yeah, we're constantly doing stuff like that subconsciously, and it just like then it starts to train them to be like, yeah, this is what I want to do. This is like I want to go there, and then they get a little bit older, and then they're like,
Right.
well, I can get the big cart now.
Right.
And they're
But it's like
"Let's
it's.
bring it
I think
back."
it's cool because since the kid has the control, he's gonna be like throwing the things in the cart, and like if it's a larger cart, the kid won't really have that much of an opportunity to like have his say on what he wants to
Right.
get. And so like when the parent sees it already in the cart, it's like easier to just buy it than like have to go through the trouble of putting it back, unless they just throw it up randomly on the shelf.
which a lot of times they do.
Right.
But
it also it at least 5 times out of 10, what that kid throws in the box, the parents are gonna end up getting anyways.
right. So not only did us having the small carts bring them to our store,
It also made
now
them
they're
buy
starting
more
to see
things.
everything at their level. Like
Right.
it's
They're
crazy.
being an educated shopper.
right.
to
or
a degree.
controlled. I don't really know yet.
It is more like a control.
Right. It's
for
training.
sure.
That's how Ben put it. Is that it was training
It's training for
the future.
for
But like the other thing we run into
A
right off the bat
nuclear
is like
home.
sales. Think of our foyer. Like we put like the beautiful
Oh.
looking things,
right.
all
All
that kind
the
of
sale
stuff, all the
items.
sale items. Like we put all the LaCroix there, and then produce has their sumos and that kind of stuff. And then the very first thing is their big display, their A spot, right? 'Cause right now we're selling sumos. Like that's the thing. It's in season. It's delicious. It's expensive.
It is so delicious.
It goes on sale as of today. By the way.
I don't need a reason to go there when I'm not working.
But see though, it went on sale.
I know. So
Right?
now I'm thinking about it.
And then it goes back to color. Like what color are our sale signs?
Yellow.
Bright ass yellow and the word sales and bright ass red.
Right.
Right?
It's just kind of it's like the two most like distinctive
Like, hey.
colors.
Hey,
Right,
you can
no,
read it
like-
from far away.
Right, and it's also like the color. Yeah, it's colors that stand out really, really strongly.
That, but which is funny. So now bringing it back to like your type of design, which is audio, right? What kind of things do we do the same thing with in audio? You use certain types of music in commercials and
So I feel like music comes from a sense of like conveying emotion, for sure. So it's like trying to design sounds that make people feel certain things, and like all sounds do have that effect on people. Like very specific chords, like playing in minor chords, will make you feel sad, and like major chords have like a more brighter kind of sense to it. So it's like at the like the fundamental level is trying to incorporate my own feelings into the music, so it's understood in a way that like makes people, I guess for me, as I want to make people dance, so I try to convey emotions that make people want to feel like dancey, but also I don't know. I make a very heavy, dark kind of music, so it's
But you make it full of a beat that people can start
yeah,
feeling
no,
it moving
definitely.
to. When we were listening to your song earlier, Chocolate, I believe,
Yes.
which you can find on his website. We were listening to it, and it was
Did it make you hungry?
it. I'm just always hungry. First off,
Same.
but it made us both go like, all right, cool. We're starting to hear it.
Right.
Some interesting sounds right off the bat, and that beat kind of kicks in. We're like, oh, and then it drops. We're like, okay, all right. And
Yeah,
then
I
it
like
kinda
that.
build up again, and we're like, what is
I think
happening?
I've like noticed like since I've been doing a lot of like sub modulation that lower end frequency I think is I don't know for some reason at least with me it I can feel it a lot in my gut. So when there's like a lot of sub play, my stomach's like on a roller coaster with
Right.
it, and I just like that feeling of like bringing someone up and then like taking them down like a roller coaster is just
That's awesome.
yeah. I try to bring that
So
always.
two things with sub. My setup has 2 subs.
Okay.
So it shook the house. It was
I'm so glad.
freaking awesome. Then we smelled burning, so we were like, I don't know what that's all about, but
Interesting.
But then in like the band when we were making songs too, we started to play around with modulation and different
Right.
stuff too. Like even at the intros of our songs, we would hit play. Like we'd have the clip like on a phone or something that hook up to my amp.
Right.
We'd hit play, and one of them was a bass drop. And it was like, and then as soon as
Nice.
it hit, boom, we jumped right in.
That's awesome.
We were starting to play around.
Yeah,
a
and
lot
like
with
sub's
that kind
great
of
as
stuff.
as doing things like fills and stuff, and just using it as like a
Right.
transition sound into something else for sure.
Right, yeah. And one of my favorite bands, Avenged Sevenfold, when the
Right.
Rev was alive, he used to have some really cool stuff. They started experimenting with a lot of electronic
Right.
parts to their songs. He had this really cool bar that was already programmed with what sound he wanted, and as soon as he hit it with the stick, it would do the sub drop or do something different.
So speaking on that, there's a like really interesting. What is that band called? They always host Electric Force, the String Cheese Incident.
I've heard of them, but I've never seen them.
So I personally I saw them, and I like it's a jam band. It's really cool. But then I heard they have the side project, 2 of the members of it, called Iodo, which is like End of Time Orchestra, and it's like all live like electronic synth stuff, and it's the coolest thing ever. It's a drummer and a key and a synthist, and he has
Synthist, I've never heard that term before. That's cool.
I've never used that term before. I was gonna say keyboardist, but like he just has like 15
synthist.
synths.
I like that.
Maybe not 15, but a really large amount
Yeah.
of synths, and they're all like set up around him, and he's like playing all these different things all around, and then he'll like pull out a guitar and start playing it. It's super crazy. And then the drummer, he has like his big old drum kit, and he has this pad also, and it has all these different effects like a voice loop, and so he'll like be playing that with his drums, and he'll like be doing voice loops. And there was one set he did where it was completely like the entire like old school Wu-Tang Clan hip hop set.
Yeah.
And it was just like he was just doing all these raps with his voice, and he was like looping them and doing all these really crazy things, and like I've just never heard anything executed like that. And it's like interesting because you can't really find a lot of their music online, because a lot of their stuff they do is all improvised when they play live.
That's cool.
So it's like when I'm in the studio, I think about how all of it's going to be received at the club, but it's like I've never had to sit there on the spot and try to
And just make
like
something on scratch.
like play electronic
Yeah.
live like that, which is definitely something I want to get into doing, because I think when you can do the more things you can do live while you're playing, the more interesting it is. For
Yeah,
sure.
that's wow. That's a really good point. Speaking of like improv like that, he was showing me this artist last week when we were hanging out and getting like our website and everything up and
Right.
running that is so good with looping. I've never been good with
Right.
looping. I can't do
It's
it in my
hard.
life.
It's a-
but she'd sit on guitar, she'd play like a chord or two, a progression, and then hit the loop button, and it would
Did she use like a pedal? Or did she just
I'm
have,
assuming so because I didn't see her actually activate anything, so
Right.
it had to have been a pedal. And then she would go around, and then she was adding drums, so she'd play a little mini beat, and then it would loop, and she would move on to the next instrument. She did everything.
That's hard because it's like you really have to consider like just the time signature that you're in,
Yeah.
and that's like something that I've been in bands before, but I've never been in like a really successful band. So
Yeah.
it's always just been like mediocre with my friends in high school, and then so now I'm doing these classes where I'm recording live with like a band, and so I have to really be present of the time signature
Yeah.
and like all of that, and like even in my music theory class, that's something that we're doing constantly. So it's like interesting. I feel like I'm teaching myself music backwards from the way I've like learned
Right.
it my whole life. So it's like all these new concepts that I've kind of like had the fundamentals and like understanding of from just doing it for years, but I've never had like a vernacular of it, or like a really
Like the exact terms
right,
why
I've
this
never
does
had
that.
yeah exactly
A
like
leads
I've
to
known
B
about
because-
triads, but like not because I like looked up in a dictionary and like sat there and I played all the triads, but like just like getting comfortable and like
Yeah.
hearing sounds and just kind of figuring out what sounds good. I've like taught
Yeah,
myself
yeah.
all these different things, so now it's like really interesting to try to
Right, and
fight
then that
this
like
knowledge I already have, because
and that
like
only
I know I learned
expands
it
like what
wrong.
you know of it, and maybe not necessarily. Maybe you just didn't
Maybe not
learn it
wrong.
traditionally.
Exactly.
Because that's a lot of stuff that like with vocals. Because in our band, I was the guitar and the vocal, but I've never like sang before. So I was taking lessons that I could find online, that kind of thing. I never had an actual teacher,
Right.
which I should and want to still do.
Definitely.
But so I was just kind of doing things and like practicing. I found like some good warm-ups and like started learning, oh, that's why certain things happen, or that's why I feel this way, because it's all like
Right.
singing is an instrument still. It's just using vocal cords rather than like metal ones on a violin or my guitar, for example. And they're all designed that way. Like I love thinking about how certain things in life that we're just used to were made.
Right, something that we've just been so accustomed of having all
like
around.
an acoustic guitar, just an empty wooden box with strings on it that vibrate at a certain frequency.
And it's just that, and it's like interesting. The only thing the thing that we're hearing is the reverberation off of the inside of the instrument, which is just like
Right.
such a crazy concept to think of.
And then
that,
our
like,
chords are literally just, I want this to vibrate at this.
frequencies are just ooh, they
They're
give me
amazing.
goosebumps. It's really crazy.
And it's just like, we take it for granted, a lot of that stuff. Like, can you imagine the person who made the first guitar or first instrument?
Man, I just like, it's corny, but I definitely feel that like music is a universal language that like
Oh, totally.
it just 'cause
Music and
sa-
math.
Music and what?
Math.
Ugh. I mean,
I like both though, so.
I really, man, I just got to get over this like love-hate relationship with math, because everything I do is just math, and like everything in music is just math. So I'm just like,
Oh, absolutely.
They're like math, time signatures, all these things, counting, and I'm
Right.
like,
When I was taking
at
my
least it's
audio
easy
classes,
math.
like that's what we were saying, and everybody in there was like, crap. And I'm like, no, I love this because I come from an engineering background.
right.
I was like, yeah, no, let's
No,
do
it's
this.
like everything is an equation, and like everything is
Yep.
like everything is
He was
understood
teaching us
through binary
equations for it. I can't even remember what exactly it was though. It's like, yeah, you got to figure out these equations, and you'll get this part for the
Right.
sound. I'm like, perfect. You just
You're
gave
like,
me the
I
thing
got
that I
this.
understand the most. And
like,
everyone
so
else was like
it's
struggling with
it's like
it.
interesting because like you can like come out of it from like a right hemisphere like background, or like me, I'm like completely left, so mine is just like bam, creative noises, and like that's how I learned. And like I think it's interesting that people who can find that balance of both, because I feel like for a musician you really have to, or like for just any kind of art, you really have to be like really tapped into that left side. Otherwise it's just like you can't teach creativity, and you can't like just, I don't know, if you're not, I don't know, I just feel like if you're not like a really really creative person, it's not gonna.
Well, kinda, yes. So I think mostly it's, you can't, like you said, you can't teach creativity, but you can let it blossom.
Right.
So I think a lot of like, me and my girlfriend talked about this. Her boys are geniuses, all three of them in their own way, and it's gorgeous. And I think a lot of problems where that fades away and we don't see a lot of it nowadays is because the way schools are structured and the way certain things are designed
Right.
really knock it to the point where you're like, no, we're taking the creativity out. You have to do it this way.
Right, no, it's-
Why?
it's like-
Just because I said.
It's like weird. All the schools are like designed to like follow this specific curriculum, and it's like it is kind of not necessarily brainwashing, but it's like creating these children to be a specific way, and like training them all to like go into this specific like path, and it's like no one is wired the same way, so
Yeah.
no one's designed the same way.
And that's what it was that like the next thing they started talking about after that was like the what are the tests called? Commutative the test that everyone takes together, like the
I know what you're talking about, but
SAT, ACT.
oh yes.
I forgot what the actual term was for the test themselves, but
Yeah.
everybody takes the same test, same questions, right? Even if they're just in different spots.
Like a placement test kind
yeah,
of thing.
stuff like that. But it's like how everyone
Like
takes
an aptitude
it.
test,
yeah,
maybe?
everyone takes it, and then you're like, well, Jimmy here scored low on it. He's like, so obviously you're failing him and teaching him this subject where. Bobby over here, he aced the whole thing, or he aced the science part. Like, yeah, good job. You're like, no. It's like teaching a fish and a monkey to like
Do the same exact
Whoever can
task.
climb that tree the best,
Right.
is going to be successful. The fish is like, how the heck
What
do
do
I?
you want me to do? I can't excel at
How the
that.
heck do
like-
I climb that tree? That kind of thing, right?
Right, and that was like interesting because I never been like super into sports, and like middle school it was like required to take a physical like elective class, like,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of like I was not like ever like into sports or anything, so I just was like meh during soccer. So it's like kind of hard to like force.
Right. And did they
yourself
grade
to
you on
want-
it?
Yeah, of course they grade you on it, like the ability to run, like
Right.
well, like
and that's
It's
and
silly.
it's funny too because PE was something I'm like, okay, here's a good example of that kind of same like test thing, right?
Right.
Not everybody is good at it or even interested in it, but I like the fact that they still have to do it because it's physical. It's still good for
right.
you.
I
regardless.
understand that aspect of it. Like
Yeah.
I definitely think everyone should get like exercise
Mm-hmm.
for sure. It's not only good for the body, it's amazing for the mind, and like it
Right.
helps deal with stress and like a lot of other things.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know, when you're forced to do something, it kind of just makes you not
Right.
want to do it
and
more.
Exactly. And I think they need to approach it differently, stuff like that, design it differently, where it's just like, all right, say day one, we all run a mile, for example. I know. For example, right? And then we all go around. The fast ones are finished fast. The slower ones take a little bit more time. It's like that should be your place marker. All right. So say for example, you do your mile in 20 minutes, for example, and I do mine in 8. Cool. That should be like our base.
The grade,
where the grade should be
more like on you. It should be more based off like how well you've improved versus are you the fastest person in the class.
Compared
and
to
it's
everybody
always
else,
like
yeah.
there's always favoritism in classes
Right,
like
yeah.
that. And it's like always like
It should be
sucks
based
when
off
you're, when
improvement,
you're
yeah.
in that class and like you get picked last for something. That's the worst feeling ever.
Right, yeah.
I've been there. It sucks. No one
Right.
wanted to.
But yeah, it's like in anything too, it should be based on like improvement. Or there was one thing I was reading before. It was like how grades are working. Oh, actually, it was for my my thesis
Okay.
that I was writing. It was how game design can be utilized in the classroom and therapy
Right.
to help increase like the effectiveness of it, right? And one thing I had researched and found out was like
What kind of therapy?
any
Okay.
you can put a game, some sort of game idea behind anything.
Right.
And because my mom's an occupational therapist, so I was thinking more along her lines on how she could
Right.
implement it, but also in teaching, because I have a lot of friends that are teachers. But it was more along the line like grades shouldn't be like A, and every time you mess up, I'm taking a point away.
Right.
'Cause that reinforces negativity. It should be more like you did your math for the first time. Wow, you improved. Increasing, gold star, everything like going up, right? Rather than starting at the best and becoming worse. You can be like starting at a base and become better. So that was like a lot of what my thesis was based on. And even in therapy, same thing. You're like, all right, where's your base at? Say, for example, you're in physical therapy or in PT. It's like, all right, where are you at? And then increasing, like you're improving. They already do it like that. So why can't you implement that in other aspects of life, especially with kids?
I think it's interesting. I don't know. This may sound a little far fetched, but I just feel like our society is in a place where we like to. It's easier to control people who are not happy. So if we reinforce positivity, it's just breeding more people who are happy, who will feel like they want to have more of an input, and they're
Absolutely.
harder to control. And so our society is like, we want to control everything and have everyone under us and listen to us. So it's just like, it's
I feel exactly the same way
It's weird.
because think about it, like if you're trying to run everything and your people are just compliant, you can run it however you want.
yeah, exactly.
But if they start to free think, they start to like, no, we can improve here, and you're like, no, that's not what I want as
Right.
being the boss there. Then you start having that competition, you start having that conflict and stuff like that, and then everything starts to fall apart.
Exactly.
Exactly. Like No, I totally get what you're saying,
Right.
and that's a lot of what needs to change, like
Oh,
to make
definitely.
anything really good improve.
I mean, yeah, it's just we're all trying to like everything is like a product of fear, and it's all control based off fear propaganda, and like everything is just fear propaganda at this point. Everything
Yeah.
on the news is just like to scare people, at least on specific networks that.
Well, everything in general, like if you think about it, so
Because it's easier to just be afraid of something than to try to understand it. And,
Right.
like that's our problem, is that we just are so quick to just jump to like be afraid of it than try to like see the other perspective of it.
yeah,
Which
in
is
everything.
sad. And everything.
And one of the things one of my favorite quotes, I think I even mentioned this on a different podcast actually with you, but one of my favorite quotes is, people don't listen to understand, people listen to respond.
Exactly.
So if you just like, and that's a big reason why we started doing this, because we want other opinions on everything. We want to talk about whatever we want to talk about.
Like as a musician and an artist, I never think I'm the best. I mean, I like to think that I'm good, and I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing with it, but I always take positive criticism, because I mean, I don't know everyone else's story or what they've done with music, and I am always open to like suggestions, because I think everyone is important and everyone has like their own way of doing things, so it's like it's interesting to get those perspectives.
Right, and that's a good way to. Yeah, that's a really good way to think about it, because
Stay humble.
right, and being humble is like one of the key aspects of you having, like, living out your life to the fullest.
Exactly.
My dad always used to say too, it was just like, no matter how good you get, strive to be the best, but there's always somebody better.
Right.
You're like, all right, cool.
And like it's true. There's like 6 billion people on the planet. Like there's gonna be someone better at you, and
Right.
you can't let that like stop you from trying to achieve your goals, because
Right.
it's like something to strive to be as good as.
And too many
versus,
people
like,
think that way too, where it's just like no,
But it's
I can't
also-
do this, or I can't do that, or
It's also interesting. I feel like the generation I'm a part of, they're all like people who think they're the best at everything, and so we also have like this group of people who think they're great at everything, and so they're all like stuck up and snobby, and they're like, oh, I'm better than you, so I don't have to like talk to you. And it's like scary, because I've been like noticing that more and more with like some of the people I know who have this like personality that acts like they're better than me, even though they're like just another 23-year-old kid. Like, I don't know, it's
right.
weird.
Yeah, it's becoming more abundant now, like that. And even like you were saying, fear earlier, everything's super scary. There's a lot of people like, where's the world gone? The world's gone to shit, like that kind of thing, like that.
Right.
But it's always been a scary, dangerous place. The fact is that our tech is changing, where we get info instantly.
Right, yeah, so it's just like fear interface 24/7.
Yeah.
You turn on the
I mean,
TV and
we
it's
all have
like,
these,
right?
like,
You turn on the
mini
TV and
computer.
it's like 9 dead in a fire, 33 like killed in a mass shooting, 4 mass
Right.
shootings in America.
And
And it's like
then-
it's scary, because like all of these things are true and they're happening, and like it's just like everything feels more accessible.
Oh yeah,
So it's like the opportunity, it's like
it's instant.
yeah, and it's a scary thing that people are really like just trying to seek fame, and they'll try to get it as any way as possible. So like it's easy to go to a gun store and get a gun and then kill a bunch of people and get on the news and be famous for it. And like some people think that way, and
Compared to the kid who just raised money for cancer.
right, exactly,
By
and like
doing his own thing. Like,
right,
you know?
and like and he wasn't even thinking about it and getting famous. He was just like, I want to help this fund and
Right.
and help people, and like I feel like that's like the kind of approach you have to have with everything, is just don't do it for like this amazing end result. Do it because you love what you're doing, and like you want to like make this your life,
Right.
versus like just trying to seek for that like instant gratification, which is what everyone wants, is just instant gratification. And like with the age of social media, it brought out
Easy
that
way out,
yeah,
first
it-
off.
and it like that also like just made people feel like so like everyone needs to feel validated online, and it's like crazy, because we have these people
Keyboard warriors.
we have these people who are like Instagram like celebrities and models, but what have they done really? They're just posting pictures of a fake life on an application to make people think they're like living this like
It
this
reminds me
amazing
of a
life.
story I just heard too, was that this guy was posting all these extravagant pictures of him like in these immaculate houses and these great suits and stuff like that. He was exposed, and it's like he just did Airbnb.
There you go.
I was
You
like,
see?
what the heck?
People just try to like fake flaunt online
Right?
all the time.
Which is funny because they designed it to look that way.
Exactly. No, it's all part of design. It's like they're designing this fake life that makes people want to strive for it, even though it's like.
Or
not
I
a
wish
real
I had
life.
his life. That
Exactly.
Kind of
And
thing. You
it's
don't
like,
really know.
yeah, it's not. You don't really know, and it's also like there's no reason for you to want to pay attention to that because like you should just be focused on like living your life to the fullest.
Yeah.
Like this whole
What
thing
makes you
was so-
happy?
Or and it also like I don't know. I think it screwed up like dating too because it's just like everyone is so easily accessible at your phone and like I mean it's designed that way. Like we are in a fast time, so everything needs to be fast, and like dating is now has to be fast. So
All digital.
all digital. You can
Weird.
swipe and just meet someone in person and then be done with it. And like that's usually how it goes.
Right.
People don't have the attention span to like emotionally invest themselves in someone because of how easy it is to just do it with someone
Or
else.
in general nowadays, because like even like a lot of friends of ours will be like, yeah, cool, awesome. We'll talk like for example at work or whatever. I'm
Right.
like, well, let's go meet up or do something, or and then they'll be like, yeah, cool, and then they'll either like what is it, flake out or
Right.
just kind of
Just
like or something
ghost.
came up or they're like make excuses, that kind of
Right.
thing. And I'm cool if that's how you want to approach it. Cool. Like
Right.
there's different types of people for different things. Like maybe you don't like being social like that, but I'm
Just
one
be
of those people.
honest.
It's like, yeah, I'm like, just tell me no, or tell me like I don't really like being social. Sure, I'll fight you on it for a little while, but
Right,
I
but
mean,
then at the
in
end of the
that's
day,
you.
it's
I'm
like,
not gonna
yeah,
try
exactly.
to change you, that kind of stuff. But what was it? Oh, going back to the dating, like you were saying, like the all the dating apps.
Yeah, it's
So
just
if you think about
ridiculous.
like the very first one that was designed, right? Cool.
like
People
Plenty
can
of Fish or
yeah. So
Christian
you got,
Single Meat.
or was it Farmers Only? Like all those ones. So you got
Farmers
all
Only
these
is my
different
favorite
types,
one.
right?
Sign me up, partner. Yeehaw.
So you got all these different types, right? And then you have like the ones that you pay for, like Match
Right.
or eHarmony.
Oh
that
yeah,
kind
and
of
those
stuff,
are
right?
like the ones where scientists are in a lab, like
Right.
deciding that you are the perfect match, which
Right?
is just
So that company's still making the money from it because
Right.
you want all these things. So all these people are able to access and do it. But then there's the free ones. You're like, well, why am I going to pay for one?
right. I can just
I could just do a free one. And then you start running into fake bots
Fake-
and
oh.
profiles and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it's all designed that way so that the person, for example, say you got on there and then you start talking to bots, you're like, all these girls are talking to me. Oh, and they're gorgeous.
and it's at the end of the
It makes you feel good.
and the end game is like it's the people who are running those apps making those bots and then getting money based off every
Because now
time
you're
you
like
swipe on
invested. You're
them.
like, oh, people are
right,
actually
and then if you
talking
message
and
back to
liking me.
them, like exactly, yeah, it's silly.
Right. Or they have the what were you talking about earlier? Oh, the Instagram models. They have the private Snapchats or the private Instagrams. All the for lack of a better term, I meant thoughts.
You better stop. You better stop it right now. I'm gonna cut this show.
What's wrong with thoughts except
So our whole show started
Not
off as a
thoughtful.
joke. It was our buddy was
Shout
like,
out-
I'm gonna make a
shout
show
out to
called
Ellis.
Shout Out to Alice.
Thoughtful
Thoughts on
thoughts.
thoughts. But it wasn't like
Thoughts on
That's how it
thoughts.
started. And I'm like, dude, I want to use that, but I'm gonna use the intellectual version. He's like, you do whatever you want. I don't
Like,
care.
as long as you don't con thoughts on thoughts.
It was just super funny, but that was like every time we hear that, we just joke about it because that's how it started. It was just a joke, and then we started doing
Beautiful.
this, and it was awesome. But
I love how like amazing things can come out of just like these really really small and simple jokes and
Right.
stories, and it just creates like the
and that's why we for lack of a better term for this episode, like that's why we designed it the way we did.
right
Thoughts on thoughts. It's us thinking about like just
thinking.
yeah. And it was like we did a test run before we even started running it, where we were driving. I think we were driving to Lakewood. Where are we going?
No, we were going to
DTC?
Yeah,
Yeah, so we're driving south from here.
Right.
And,
Micro Center. That's
yeah,
where we're going.
because we're gonna go to the computer store down there, right? Because we're a bunch of nerds.
Definitely.
But we're driving
Same.
down there. It's like, let's do a test run. For example, like, what's your favorite food? That kind of thing. We started talking about it, and then next thing you know, the team
They
had
had
this
this-
big conversation that just led to somewhere else. We're like, this is what we're trying to capture. This kind of thing. So it doesn't
Just
matter
natural
where it goes.
conversation.
Yeah. The only difference is like,
It has a fundamental beginning.
yeah, or
I feel like fundamental is my word of the day. I've been using that
it
a
has
lot.
that spark or whatever,
does.
like fundamental, however you want to word it. But
Words with like more
something
than
that
4
started.
syllables.
You're right. But it's just like it's that initial like startup, like for example, like the spark to the ground or the
Right.
dried twigs starts the fire, right?
Right.
That's all it was. So we have
Speaking of dried twigs, and like sound design in general, I think like one huge thing is capturing sounds like around me. So I use my iPhone a lot, And I wish I had like a really good audio recorder or like a field recorder or something, which I don't right now, but the iPhone's pretty good and it doesn't pick up a lot of background noise. But like I'll sample things like my cat or me jingling keys, and it's just me talking. And like in my most recent song that I uploaded, it literally has like a 40-second interlude with my cat, and there's like parts with me talking. And I think it's like interesting now that the more I've been producing, the more I start like realizing how much I can incorporate from like the things around me and like the things that I like outside of like producing. Just like
You
going-
view the world as different elements of sound.
I literally like the world is a giant instrument to me. Like glass is an instrument. Me like knocking on different parts of like a mirror
Right.
is an instrument. Me
Well,
like
even,
shaking
like,
plastic.
The glass thing, like the crystal glasses full of different amounts of water, have a different tone. Like,
and yeah, I've seen people
everything.
make like songs with those
Right?
things. Crazy.
so that's funny that you see the world that way. Because with me and him, we were asked on another podcast, on our game design one,
Right.
how we view the world, and I view it as a game, as a level. I can see everything in it. Like, for example, if we were to make this into a level, what would be in there? We'd have NPCs playing. We'd even have like Easter egg of us sitting here talking. Like, oh,
Have
we
you
guys are
ever
doing a
met someone in
podcast.
person who was an NPC?
What do you mean?
Like you just looked at them and you're like, this person's like an NPC.
Like he was
and
just basic and plain and
he's
like
just a
placed there?
non-playable character in my life. Like most of the guests at Whole Foods, I feel like are NPCs.
That
like you go up to
just
them and
blew my mind.
Like you go up to them and you talk to them and they just say like this random phrase and you're like, I don't even know what this person's talking about. Like it's just out of context.
No, I totally get that. But I've never thought about it like that because I think about everything as a level, right? But I never thought about that specifically where it's like,
And then you meet someone and you're like, man, this guy's a boss. Like he's like
Right.
the final boss. Like
or you
Will.
can be like for example, like Will or someone tells us like, hey, go get this thing for so and so. Boom, now we're on a quest.
That's what I try to make it like that because I think that's very fun. And like I mean
Right.
I set my life up as in like I write down little lists and tasks for me to do, and it's kind of like I'm doing like little quests even though it's like by kitty litter. But like I feel like when I have this list laid out and I can like visually see what I'm supposed to be doing, it like helps me accomplish it more for sure.
Which makes like the game menu.
Exactly.
Exactly.
It's
That's
design right
awesome. That's
there.
amazing. Stop it right there. Just kidding. That's a wrap.
Perfect.
No, that's wow. I didn't think about the NPC part, but that's really cool. Because then we have like the recognizable NPCs. For example, French Marie. You're like, oh crap, it's that
Right.
time, and then the game changes. If you
Right,
think
based
about
around,
as a
like-
game, you're like,
That's like an event that happens like every so often.
yeah,
or
or the phone
something.
calls like. We hear the cue, the audio cue on the speakers above, right? Then it's up to us to be like, as the players,
Did you know something interesting on that? Like with these certain like door. Have you ever thought about like the tone or frequency that a doorbell's in?
weirdly, yes.
So it plays in F minor.
but I didn't know specifics.
I'm pretty
Wow.
sure it was F minor is what I learned, but I just think it's really interesting that like bells like that they have like very specific like tones that are played to make them
Uh-huh.
to like sound a specific way.
Why?
I don't know.
Huh. I wonder if it's just recognizable.
It's like I know the specific tones for a doorbell. They use those because it's like a warmer sound versus like a bright, high pitched like major chord. It's like a minor chord.
or in my terms, because you're like breaking it down super awesome, and I love it. But like for example, it could be like a warmer tone, like you said, compared to an alarm, like
Right,
like
right.
oh, like the one when Prep Foods leaves their
Right.
door open too long.
Right, and like those are all like based off certain frequencies. And it's like so when I was watching your other podcast about movies and like specific sounds in movies, so it's like I think it's interesting that horror movies all use like very specific frequencies to invoke fear, like with their like so there's not like a lot like there's not like a lot of music in certain scenes
Yeah.
in horror films, but it's like these audible tones that are just kind of like one sound, and it's like very eerie, but like psychologically it reacts to like certain like receptors in our brain
Yeah.
that invoke fear into us. And so like that's why in certain scenes we get like the chills or something, and it's not like basically like that we're watching something that's scary, but it's like these frequencies and tones that our brain is transcribing is like invoking that fear, like along with the scene that is happening.
Yeah. So 2 questions for you. You just made me think about it. One is, what do you think of Foley and being a Foley artist, that kind of thing?
What do you mean by a Foley artist?
So in like you mentioned movies, and you start thinking of those certain tones in horror movies.
Right.
A
Oh, like
lot
an artist who just like creates
creates sound in general. Like for example, in our game, when we're in the game engine, it's literally this blank plate, and I'll go and I'll draw the thing out, send it to him. He'll make my level.
Right.
You can walk around all you want, but it's still just nothing.
Right, until you start adding the
My
the
freaking
sounds.
my freaking sound designers. I had a team of 5, 6, 7, I believe, 7 sound designers that were part of the
Right.
audio department in our school. Dude, like it was. First off, it was crazy that I was able to bring together 22 people on our team. We were the biggest team the school had ever seen working on one single game
That's
throughout
amazing.
multiple departments. I think I was actually mentioning it to you when
Yeah,
I first
you
did
were.
it. So we had these sound designers, man, and they were geniuses. We had it was like a $500,000 recording studio in our school that they were able to use.
Beautiful.
They made everything from scratch, every single
They
sound.
used like pots and pans and stuff, or were they doing actual like design?
Everything. So we wanted rain, so they were doing rain, but we had tin roofs. So you know what he did?
He poured water onto like.
He poured Skittles onto the tin. He was just dropping them, and it was like, and it made the perfect rain on tin
That's so
sound.
smart. You know, and like
It was gorgeous.
it's like that's the same kind of stuff that I like really really appreciate, because I try to do stuff like that like with my music.
Right.
Because I feel like with making electronic music, there's so many people. It's such an accessible thing to do now, because like all you really need is a laptop, and there's plenty of free like DAWs that you can use, but there's also like the ones you pay for. But even some of those have like trial periods, so pretty much as long as you have a computer, you can basically produce music.
Yeah.
Well, then it comes down to like skill
Tools.
and your
It
creativity
comes down to the
and like
tools,
your
too.
ability to understand all of that, and then also just having time to sit there and like mess with everything until
yeah.
you know what
How
you want to
motivated
do.
are you? How much do you really want to do this?
Oh.
That kind of thing.
So much.
So, like you said with your DAWs, well, I was taught Pro Tools, but I also know Audacity.
Right.
Right. So I'm like, I can't ever afford Pro Tools. Are you kidding me? So I'm like, I'm just gonna stick with what I know because I don't need it for crazy, awesome.
Right. And
insane
Audacity is
things.
usually just like recording out with microphone
Right,
and
yeah.
stuff, right?
It's basic, right to the point. Like I use the audio feature in Premiere Pro now because I don't need it to create music and Foley and all
Right.
this stuff. All I need to do is make sure our voices are good when I edit the videos, for example. But so DAWs to you are game engines to us.
Exactly.
So there's different types of game engines. They all boil down to the same exact thing, or our 3D modeling programs boil down to the same thing. It's just a matter of the tool set that's there. Like, what can I do easily, like Control V, Control C, Control D,
Right.
compared to like, okay, I got the copy, the paste, the cut. It's like now I want to do this, this, and that. Like when I edit our videos in Premiere, it's like I know my keys are like this one will
Right,
go
exactly.
to my move
That's how
tool,
it
this
is
one will
with-
go to my cut. So now I'm like, okay, how efficient can I be now?
Right, and yeah,
So,
and
yeah,
like
I get you.
At
man.
like fundamental levels, all these DAWs basically do the same thing. It's just understanding like what commands
Right.
do what. And like I'm already at the point with Ableton where I'm like, just, like
a lot of
hitting
my
little
designers
things.
used a combination of Pro Tools and Ableton. Like that was like
They
their
go
two
great
things.
together.
Yeah.
And
Speaking
it-
of, I don't know if you know, but a DAW is a digital audio workspace. Hi,
I did
man.
not.
It's basically like a game engine to us, but it's all audio.
Audio. I know Ableton and everything else that you mentioned, but not
Yeah.
DAWs.
It's just like the overall term. It's like the term game engine to us.
Gotcha,
is there
gotcha,
for the audio.
I
Sorry.
gotcha.
You
No,
I just looked at you and you're
That
like,
makes sense. That makes sense now.
looking
Yeah.
at us. But what do you like? What's your favorite DAW?
Ableton for
Ableton?
sure, and it's I mean the first DAW I ever used was Reason, which is super dope. It's just
I've never heard of that.
it's really interesting because the way it's laid out is that you have like all the stuff you would have acoustically and like outside of the workspace, but it's just digital. So you'd like flip it around and you have like where you plug in all the cables and you have like these little wires that you would drag in and like put in.
Whoa,
So
you
if
have digital ones?
Yeah. So if you come from a background of like playing like guitar
Mm-hmm.
always and like being in a band and like having your setup like right there,
Yeah.
it's amazing. And I'm
That's
not from that
awesome.
background, but my dad is. So he was like, "Oh, you just do this, and that," and I'm like, "I honestly have no idea what you're
Because it's
doing."
basically it's just a digital version of it.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
And so it looks really really nice and it works really really well. But for me it was not what I felt comfortable doing. And then my friend like introduced me to Ableton, and then I got it, and it's
You're
just
like,
been up.
"That's-
Yeah, like that's the one.
It's funny because that's kind of a similar thing that me and him went through with our 3D modeling and our game engine. So
Right.
our school taught us one game engine called Unity, right? And it was it's basic, but it's straight to the point and it's easy to get a hang of.
Right.
Then we got introduced to Unreal Engine, and that one changed everything because now we're like this is so beautiful and gorgeous, and there's things you can do with it. You're like, whoa, why didn't we start this from the beginning? And our teacher put it the most perfect way. He goes, if you would have learned Unreal, you didn't want to learn anything else. So if we taught you Unity to learn the basics,
Then
you'll
did.
appreciate Unreal even better. So
That's smart.
I'd see you as appreciating Ableton better because you started off with one that you're like, I don't,
don't
quite
really-
understand, but you started to learn.
Right.
And that gave you that drive, that force to it. So that's
And it's
awesome.
like, and it's also just like the drive to wanting to make music.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like whatever job I was given, if you don't have the drive to like make music, then you're just not going to get it no matter what.
Right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Wow, you have a similar mindset to us when we were making our stuff. That's really cool. There's like, because there's, for example, I'll use the example of Pro Tools and Audacity. Okay?
Right.
You both can record audio, right? You can layer them, do whatever you want. But the tool set of Pro
Pro
Tools,
Tools is so much greater
right. That's why it also has a higher cost compared to free.
compared to free.
With us, like our 3D modeling programs, we learned Maya 3D. It's a not Adobe. It's a Adobe.
Autodesk.
Autodesk is what the parent company is. Program. So it taught us how to do 3D and that kind of stuff, modeling everything, right? So there's that one. And that one costs, but we were able to get it through the school.
Okay.
And then there's the free version, which is Blender, which would be like Audacity and
Right.
audio. And then our
Which is
higher
like a
end.
limited amount of things to do.
So like your Ableton would be like our Maya, and then your Pro Tools would be like our what's the one, the 7? The one you just been learning?
ZBrush.
ZBrush, not
Yeah.
7, ZBrush. That's literally a digital sculpting. So you start with this lump of
So
clay.
would that be something that you would open inside your main game developing program, or is that its own separate program?
It's its own program that you can import into our game engine.
So I feel like that would more lie with my VSTs that I use, like just synths that aren't necessarily with Ableton. It's things I had to download separately and then use into it.
So
Which, so, like, I
that's a
does-
good point. Yeah.
so I
ours
just-
probably have a combination of different things that you guys have, and vice
Right.
versa.
So essentially, I like Ableton is my workspace, and then I use things like Massive, which is is my tool that I use to design.
Oh
sound.
yeah, okay, I get what you're saying now.
Right.
So your Ableton is like our Unreal Engine,
Exactly,
and then
and
our outer resources are be like our 3D modeling programs
Exactly.
to bring in, or our texturing. That
Yeah,
kind of
something
stuff,
that I
yeah.
would like either open inside Ableton or like record with and then like import into
Yeah.
Ableton.
Absolutely. Okay. ZBrush is cool. It's one of the programs we learned. It starts you with like this red lump of clay,
Oof.
and you can literally mold it. I made a
Do
character.
you use like
with it that
I've
way.
been so speaking on like things like that. When I was at Sonic Bloom, which was a festival over at Hummingbird Ranch here in Colorado, there's this artist there, Android. And so one interesting thing I think about music too, and like festivals and stuff, is the incorporation of lights and like visuals into it, because like music is like without the music you won't have those sounds, like without the music you won't have those lights and those visuals, because they react to the music, but it really like
Enhance it.
it really does.
Yeah.
It makes it like such this whole like sensory experience, and
Oh,
it's
yeah.
insane. And so there's this artist named Android Jones, who is by far I think one of the most talented of VJs, which are like visual DJs.
Oh, okay, cool.
So he does this thing where he has like basically like an Oculus Rift kind of thing, like not full, like what are they what is that called?
The VR
like
headset?
the virtual like VR headset, and you'll have these gloves, and so he'll inside his screen he'll have like the visuals that are on the stage there, and then with his hands, like in this virtual world, he's like creating and changing like the shape and like the design of like what is happening on the stage. And it is freaking incredible. I was at a Sonic Bloom, and I was behind the tent that they
Who
were
was
doing.
that?
Android Jones, and he was performing for this artist called Schwangel, who has been around for a really long time. But Android Jones, and it's interesting. He's doing a like a visual show at do you know like the School of Boulder? They have like that not auditorium, but the what is that thing called? Where the planetarium?
Oh yeah,
So-
planetarium. Gotcha. Like
so-
the big round screen above you.
Exactly. So I went to this one like planetarium show where it was like Bass Nectar songs with like Android Jones visuals, and so like I read online that he's doing like a seminar or like a video there where he's gonna be doing that like whole designing thing like while his visuals are on the roof.
Yeah.
And, like, it's just something that like me being an artist, I always have to like think about like what I'm curating and like how it can be translated with images also. It's not like just me sitting there designing sound. I mean, it is, but it's also like I have to really consider like the platform that I'm going to be sharing it on, like from a live experience, because like it's one thing to like listen to the song and like go home, but if I can't make it like interesting and unique when I perform it live, then it's like it's like the same thing as just listening to the song.
Yeah, he actually knows. We were talking about the visuals and lighting and like
Right.
concert stuff because his dad sets up a lot of that stuff throughout
yeah?
Texas,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So what does he do exactly?
He's technically a sound engineer. He brings his sound equipment around Texas and just sets up for events and whatnot. And he's recently got into lighting and all that, so it's getting interesting. But my brother actually took on that kind of that kind of the role, and he's done his own concerts and stuff. And he's had me on like metal shows and whatnot.
Yeah, I was
like
gonna
that.
ask typically like what genre.
Oh yeah, he would typically do the like the metal shows, and he would
Okay.
have me do the lights, and so he would get all the strobes and whatnot. And I
Right, and
would-
yeah, even like going to just like local shows at venues that I go to pretty often, and like watching their setup there, it's a lot. It's
Yeah.
like literally like it's like playing a show at the same time that the artist is performing, because they're like having to read the crowd also as the crowd is like watching the visuals, and they have like full control of what's going on in the background and how it reacts, and it's just such an interesting concept.
Right. Haptic. Do you know that term? So haptic is like something that when it's designed, especially with sound, you'll feel it almost. Kind of like, did you ever watch Ready Player One?
I did not actually watch it yet.
Did you see the trailer though?
Yes.
He was wearing that suit and he's like,
Right.
can you feel this? That kind of thing. The haptics in it are making you feel what you're feeling there.
Right.
They actually just created a set of headphones for gamers and stuff like that you could feel it. The guy said, I felt that headshot that I just got. He felt it because of the way the sound was working in that headphones. Something so visually and
Interesting.
visual from the game because he had the headset on, but then audio is right here, and he felt like he got hit, like he got shot. It was crazy. But the other thing was there's this thing called NVIDIA Holodeck.
Right.
So it reminds me of exactly what you were just saying, where everything is kind of like he's like
Controlling,
virtual reality,
right.
controlling all this stuff like that. NVIDIA is a computer parts manufacturer. They make a lot of graphics cards, stuff like that, for like high-end gaming,
Right.
that kind of stuff, or just gaming in general. But they have this thing called NVIDIA Holodeck, which allows, like, for example, say we were in the same virtual reality world, working on a car, right? You can
Okay.
like, boom, you can make it explode, pick up
I
that
feel
part
like
itself.
I've seen something like that
It's
before.
super cool. It's really Iron Man.
Right. I feel like I saw like a commercial for like these people like designing like something inside this giant like
this
space.
virtual room. Yeah,
That
it's
is-
super cool. I would love to work on something like that
Right, because that
eventually.
also like it the possibilities are endless for like the people you can work with. You can like
Seriously.
work like halfway across the world with someone if all you have to do is like put on this thing and like sign into a specific room to like work on it together, which is
Right, that, and then with mics and audio, like you can be talking to him face to face like that, even though you're a world away.
Right, and
like,
it's really really cool like making music with other people, electronic music. It's like you don't have to be in the same room. All you have to do is you get your clips, you freeze them all as audio clips, or you get all your tracks, you freeze them as audio clips, and then you just send them to someone, and then they can load that up in their DAW, and like the parameters are pretty much like set there, and you can just go from there, and like it's
that's awesome. That's like with
technology is
us.
really
When we were designing
changed
the
the
game,
game.
we had so many different moving pieces, right? So I was like, all right, all my modelers are modeling, and they were sending me their assets and
Right.
stuff like that. So they had to export it a certain way so that my files can be read.
Definitely.
Then if it didn't work or if it did work, then we'd have to adjust from there.
right.
Like,
It's like the same thing. With
like I said,
sending music.
16-bit wave earlier for sound. Well, we had to do specific file formats for our 3D models to be
Right.
seen in the world with their textures. If not, they come in like a gray blob. Right? So you're like, oh yeah, I textured this
Back
way.
to the gray
Cool.
blobs.
Throw it back in there, and it's like, it didn't work, dude. Why didn't it work? I'm like, broke down
Right,
the
and
pieces. we're
it's like
this, and that.
interesting. I feel like technology fights back sometimes
Oh,
because
every
because
freaking time.
I'll like it'll say all selected tracks, and then I'll be like upload all selected tracks, and then it'll just upload one like full clip, and I'm like, that's not what I clicked. And
That's
then I'll
not
do
all
it, and then
selected
like
tracks.
half of them will be like completely blank, and I like literally don't know what I do, and then I restart it, and then I do it again, and it works,
It
and I'm
just
just
works.
like, I don't know what I was doing
Dude,
wrong.
we run into that all the time.
Silly. So silly.
Yeah, we had so many like little things. We're like, why didn't this work? And we found out it was like one simple fix. For example, like we were getting the last piece of our setup here to work. We've been struggling on it for weeks.
Right.
weeks, and he solved it with the help of the group on Facebook. He was like, "Oh my god, dude, it was so stupid simple.
I'm sure it was
Install
just
this
like,
program, done." We're like, "Wait, what?" And
it's
it
like
just worked.
and it comes to like just changing like one output setting or something so
Yeah,
simple.
something super tiny. Like even on my board here, like I have my different settings to send the mixes to either the control room or to like the actual mix itself.
Right.
One button, boom, everything's gone. You're like, what the heck? You're like, what's happening? Why can't I hear anything?
Honestly.
I don't know. And you start panicking, making sure everything's connected. It's literally the press of a button.
Right, and it's sometimes just accidentally having phantom power on.
Right? Oh, why are
been
my
there.
mics burning all of a sudden?
Like, do you smell?
Do you smell toast?
Yeah.
I have toast in my pocket. I forgot.
Are these microphones supposed to be smoking?
Right? Yeah, they're those haptic smoking microphones.
Oof.
Oof.
Oof. That's what I gotta say about that.
Oh my gosh. Do you have a favorite like producer or designer, like something that they like really
Millions.
millions?
So many.
I believe it.
Um,
What's your like top 5?
God, top 5.
And I guess why? Like why do you pick them specifically?
I guess it really depends. Like, I like artists because of certain ways they made me feel during certain parts of my life. And so like some artists who have been really like I've just been listening to for a really long time are like Cohen Sound and Culprit, and they've just they have such intelligent sounding design for their sounds, and it's like when I listen to a song and my first thing is I have no idea how they created that sound is what really like makes me just want to like keep listening and like figuring it out, because I think with music the most important, like going back to saying that like so many people are trying to do it, and it's there's just so many ways you can do something to make it like sound interesting, and like a lot of people just make very generic sounding things. So when I find an artist where I'm like how do you do this, it just makes me like so much more intrigued to listen to them.
Yeah.
And like artists like Cohen Sound, they've been making music for so long, and every single album it's kind of geared towards a different genre, but yet they still do it in like such a way where you can feel it, and like the way they process like some of their instruments, like you can it's them because of like you'll hear like a specific snare sound and you're like I recognize that snare because it has this very like crisp feeling to it. And snares are something that I could talk about forever because I think it's the hardest thing in the world to process and make a snare sound really, really good. And my snares always sound like shit, and it makes me sad. And so I just always use like sound design is hard, and processing and mixing and mastering. But some of
There's
my
something about it though that you like and you keep going back to it though.
I'm hooked.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
It's
and,
a drug. At a certain point, you're just like,
yeah,
gotta keep doing this.
Right now, I mean, because it's all reactive to like emotions at the end of the day. So it's like these things create like serotonin to, like,
Yeah.
shoot out, and so you're kind of like, wow, I like this song makes me feel good, and like I just try to make music that like makes you like question, and like it's all like a little bit weird, but I just like to encompass like really, really good feelings always.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, some other artists that I really, really look up to and like really, really like, I said Culprit and Cohen Sound. Some like newer artists that I have only been listening to like in the last year or two, Kursa and Seppa, Lone Drum, and they're all a part of Slugwife, and they're from the UK, and like when the first time I saw them, it really gave me a perspective on how like different you can make electronic music and how you can perform it differently, and like there's just so many like different aspects about electronic music that I never like really like understood until just like even like being in Denver like really opened up my eyes to how different you can make electronic music, because like back in Florida there was all the same artists were being brought out, and it wasn't like it just kind of like got over synthesized, and like everything just was like, okay, that just keeps sending in music that doesn't really feel like it has any kind of drive except for I'm gonna party and like listen to this and party. When like out here it's like you can really like feel the emotions that artists are putting into their music, and how like they want to curate something that's like that stands out in your head.
Sets them apart.
Exactly. And like that's like the whole goal, is just what makes you different, and like how can you like show that and like still get people to listen to your stuff.
Right, and that translate across many different genres
And
of
that can translate across so many platforms
everything.
too.
Yeah, because like with us, same thing. It was just like, okay, so if you you break it down to the smallest version of it, where it's like our group in our classroom against 2 other groups, right?
Right.
Like, what's going to make our game stand out better, right? Like, first off, we had the biggest group. Second, we had a functional game, that kind of thing. Third, we started texturing and having multiple levels. Then we get to the next class, all right, us versus 2 groups again.
Right.
What's still going to set us apart? All right, we're moving on where other groups are starting from scratch again.
Right, and you already have like a basis to go on,
Right.
because it was already
It's
successful
like
the
now
first
we're
time.
texturing, now it's playable, now I got a moving menu, now I have an interactive menu. Next thing you know, the controllers are working. Next thing
Right.
you know, it's wireless
Next
and
thing
it's
you
going
know, it's
into
being sold in this freaking
right.
shop at that
Next
point.
thing you
if
know,
it
we're
was
at
that
Comic-Con showing it off last year.
Correct.
Like, holy crap, man!
Were you
Like,
really?
Yeah.
Ooh,
We
that is
the
awesome.
school's like, we want you to be on the booth. We're like, what? He's like, we want your game playable at Comic-Con. So now we're like, okay, pressure.
And I think honestly, for me, being a part of Fosters of Frequency, which was the label I've been doing a lot of my music stuff with this past 4 or 5 months, they have set up a lot of deadlines for me to have music out and ready. And like, honestly, I've never really, when creating music, I never really set up deadlines for myself. I was kind of like, I will make a song and then not release it because I don't like one thing about it, or I waited too long and now I don't really know what I was doing with it. But with like Foster's, it was kind of like, deadline, you have until this date. If not, you're like not going to be on it. And like, I'm at the point where I feel like I want my music to be heard, and I feel like I'm curating this very specific kind of sound, and it's like really starting to show across like all of my songs that I've been like releasing recently. It has that same kind of like you do
do something specific because you like that, and then it
Exactly.
translates. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's like same but different, you know, like very similar things but just executed different ways, and it like kind of like makes that tone and that sound. Like when you think of Liddy Kidder, you're like, oh, I definitely like I know what I'm in, like I kind of know how the ride is gonna start, but I don't know like what's gonna happen throughout the whole thing, and it's just
Yeah.
kind of like that, bringing that familiarity into it.
Shh, that's funny. That's awesome. There's and when people first start talking about it too, it's like, oh yeah, it's corporate. They're gonna have deadlines. It's like, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
It isn't.
It keeps you on track.
Yeah, it keeps you on track, and it like helps motivate you to like just get your stuff done.
Right. That, and then it's mainly just how people go about it. For example, we have our case counts.
Right.
Right.
Oh gosh.
See, but you see that how you automatically feel by hearing that, right? I've already thought of
Dread.
4 different ways on how that can be improved, but still implemented. Right? What if it was a game? See, going back to that same thing.
Or like a positive reinforcement.
For example, it could be like, instead of it being like you're being punished because you can't do it fast enough, it's more like, all right, let's see who can be the fastest this week.
And you get like a $15 gift card
Or
something.
a well buck, or something simple like that.
Right.
Yeah, we're like, yeah,
I
totally.
mean,
cool.
there's like, I feel like there's not a lot of incentive to like really strive to be.
Besides the fact it's like it's not done,
Except to just
you know
get
what I
out of
mean?
it, right?
Yeah.
Like to get out of there and be like, not
But-
have to stay later.
Yeah.
And
So
like,
think about it. If we had the case count set up in a way where it's like, okay, we're starting something new. We're still doing case count, but here's where we go. Here's your thing. You're like, how many are in that aisle, right? Here's your start time and your end time. Whoever has the fastest time gets a wild buck. On top of that, whoever improved the most over their last time also gets a wild buck. So now, not only do we have incentive to be number 1, we also have incentive to beat ourselves from last time, like doing in a race car game where you're racing yourself, the ghost.
right.
You're like, oh, I'm almost faster, then you improve. So then it's positive reinforcement, and we want to be better now because we're fighting against not only ourselves, but our coworkers in a friendly manner rather than like,
Right.
just want to get done with this.
And
Like,
go home.
I've thought
it's
of many
like- it's
different ways
also
to
like-
improve different things.
It's like they don't want to do that because it's like it goes against the idea of like controlling people with fear at the end of the day.
Right.
I also just feel like it's a cycle to get people out. And I don't know, I feel like we're not warehouse workers and we're given warehouse work.
It depends on the day, but yeah, I can see that.
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting. What's something of design that you've seen before, Jaime, that really like, oh wow,
Spoons.
Spoons? What does spoons have to do with?
Design.
the way they're designed?
I mean, yes. The way
I mean, yes.
the way you shovel
Wow.
things into your mouth.
Dude, yeah. Well, I mean, you notice like you can read people based on tiny little things like that. Like for example, when
Oh,
I
yeah.
eat and my dad eat, we eat like this.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom had mentioned to him before. He goes, first off, I eat super fast,
I eat super slow.
but I don't see a problem with it because like, well, enjoy your food. It's like, no, I am. Like this is enjoying my food.
It's so
but like,
good, I just want to eat all of it
right?
now.
But then we're like doing like this, and my mom just like tells my dad too. He's like, "You're fine. Nobody's gonna steal your food." He's like, "No, it's not it. It's just I've done it for so long." And
it's just habit
he
at
was
that
raised
point.
with I think I can't even remember now because I'm thinking too quickly, but multiple siblings,
Right.
and so he didn't want them
Ooh,
to take
they
it.
would freaking steal it. Yeah.
Right.
And so that's an interesting concept because my roommate, it's like very visual that you can see like a lot of his actions are based off like how he was raised and like how his whole life like was designed to like be a specific way, like essentially to like scavenge for food because he didn't have like a lot of food in the house. So like he's implementing that now as an adult in a house with roommates who are not cool with it. And so it's like interesting to see him like just go in the fridge and grab whatever he wants and us be like, bro, you can't do that. And then him be like, well, sorry, it's like I'm a product of my environment and like that's how I was raised and like I'll try not to do it, but it's like that kind of behavior was just
Right.
so
There's
reinforced
that
into his
fine line.
life. And so it's like he doesn't know how to separate of like that's doing something wrong versus I'm fending to like survive for myself.
Yeah.
And so like it's
It's a fine line. It really
It
is
is.
to be. Because it's
And right,
a
like,
fine line between like that's how I was raised, I don't know any other better, or like using it as an excuse, like that's just how I was raised.
Right.
And
And
you're
yeah, and like
"Hey,
some people
what?"
just use it as a crutch like all the time.
Yeah, people use stuff like that as a crutch for everything, like in just in life in general. Like,
Right, and then also like we're just like everyone's super sensitive, so everyone's offended by everything. Everyone
yeah,
is
especially
always
recently.
hurt.
Dang.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That just offends you? Okay,
I'm
good.
not offended by anything.
I know I give you a lot of crap at work too, but
A
I
lot of people
don't
do.
mean it like in and I do it to everybody.
No, I know.
Also, but I don't because I find myself I'm really sarcastic. And my girlfriend hates it.
Trust me, I found out recently that I'm just mean and like
You are just mean,
I
but I think it's
know.
funny sometimes too because I'm like, okay, I've seen you do it so much. I'm like, that's just him.
I know.
And like he doesn't mean it as in like
There's
malice.
never
He's just
malintent.
like, yeah, he's just like just your
I'm
kind
mean
of
to my
humor.
friends, and they're like, Jamie, you're so mean, and I'm like, I'm sorry.
Like, have you seen how me and Andrea react or interact with each other?
Probably.
She'll walk in and I'll just stare her down, just like,
Death
like
stares.
no smile, no nothing. She's like, "Geez, what I do today?" And I'll just
You're
look
like,
at
"Oh,
her.
nothing."
And at the very end, I'll like break a smile. She's like, "Oh, okay, he's just messing with me." But it's just like stuff like that. Like everybody there, like,
I like just feel like sarcasm is just like that's my second language at that point.
Seriously,
and it's like
no.
sometimes I accidentally speak in my second language and I don't realize it. And especially when it's like a customer who doesn't know how to say my name or just calls me a can of beans or something.
a can of beans.
Yeah, they're
Oh
just like,
yeah.
when they're asking for something and they just yell the name of the product at you.
I had a lady the other day come up and just go, "Hey,"
What's up?
but it was like, "Hey, where can I find this?" I'm like,
Okay.
"What?"
Good. How are you?
That or like then I'll start real being sarcastic and I'll be like, "It's that one aisle you were just in. You were almost there." Compared to like, "Yeah, it's
I'll
one
look
more
at it and
aisle
be like,
over."
"Oh, in a grocery store.
I've never gone like that.
Oh man,
Plain, but-
I typically treat people how they treat me. So if someone is like
Oh yeah.
from people just yell things from like halfway down the aisle, and I'm just like I usually don't turn and look at them until they like acknowledge my existence as a human
Right.
being, and it's awesome because they'll just be like, oh, this one lady, I was like standing on a ladder. And the thing she was getting was like all the way on the bottom shelf, and she went to go grab it. And she looked at me. She was like, "Oh no, it's okay. I'll grab it." And I was like,
What?
"What?"
She expected you to know that? What?
Well, yeah, no, she was like, "Where's the tagliate or whatever?"
Oh, you're in pasta.
Yeah, I was in pasta like face and stuff or whatever, and she was like asking me like, and I didn't know where it was. I didn't realize it was on the bottom shelf, so I'm looking around and I don't see it anywhere, and I'm just like, I don't know. And then she's like, "Oh, here it is." And then she's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll grab it. You don't have to come down." And I was just like, I just didn't even say anything.
It
'cause I
depends
didn't know
though
what to
too, because
say.
there's
I
a lot
was
of
like-
situations like that where it's like to them it's like, did it look like we were trying? And to us, it was just like, no, you asked me. Why did you ask me so rude? Like I'm still just a
it's
person.
always
Like come
why is
on,
it so rude, and that's why I don't want to help.
right? And it sucks too, because I hate like one person ruining it for the others, especially if they're really nice. That's when
Yeah.
we're already like in that mindset.
I
Like
know.
I just worked with freaking French Marie, for example. I'm like, oh my
45
gosh.
minutes picking out bread.
And the next person comes up, and I'm like, it just
Like immediately,
comes
my
out sometimes.
response
I'm
is like, "Why
so
are you
sorry.
asking me
Like,
for help?"
God. One thing that bugs me too, my two pet peeves, just in customer service in general, like not even just at work here, but just in general.
Right.
People on their phones trying to do something else. They're like talking and talking, and they're like
And they're
looking
just
at things.
distracted and like,
Right, yeah, that, and or they're like they need help, but they don't want to get off the phone to actually get
Oh, I
help.
do
Like,
not
hold
like
on one
those
second.
people.
Where's this, and that? And I'm like,
Get off your phone.
it's literally right in front of you, like
Seriously.
that. But I don't ever like. I'm
I
not
mean, it's
that
like those
blunt,
people who don't
but
have the ability to multitask.
that are like the entitled ones. Like you can immediately tell, because their whole persona of them is differently, and I hate that.
And that also goes back to like how people are raised and just like living, like having a certain lifestyle their entire life.
Yeah.
So they just expect everything to be handed to them, or like expect that lifestyle to just like be how it is everywhere.
Right,
it's
and a
just,
lot
like,
of
the world isn't
society
set up
pushes
like
that on us too. It's like that political correctness,
Right, and it's
or
also
I'm
like-
entitled to this, this, and that because of said thing.
It's like interesting that we, as a society, are like the end goal that people set up, or like the end goal that people strive for is like big house, marriage, kids, like
That,
vacation house.
What is that?
Yeah, like
the American Dream.
The American Dream. And, like where did we just come like from a society where we just all like need to have this as our like our end goal? That doesn't sound like true happiness to me. Like I don't want to just like go to the like I don't know. I feel like there's just more to life than just like having this one specific like goal. And like I just feel like life is designed to like just like follow that path. You go to school, you get a job, you meet a girl, you date, you have a kid, and then you have like a nice house, and then you're just like there, and then like that's it. And like there's just so much more to life than that. And like
Instead of the mold, it's like just let life flow.
And like I think one thing that's really like helped me like realize that I just want to escape that is like traveling and like going to see how like other places are like modeled and like the way they're designed and like how their lifestyles are, and like not every place has that same like end goal. So-
Yeah, definitely. And traveling and going to places that you haven't been to, or you've been wanting to go to, or you're just randomly like, oh, hey, we're here, like
Right.
changes your perspective on a lot of things. Like we went to the Dillon Ice Castles, right? I took my girlfriend there, and I'm rarely ever that far north or in the mountains, like especially up in this area.
Right.
It's like, but we went to go check that out. I'm like, yeah, sure. And we pulled up, and it was like, okay, they're cool from the outside. It's like, okay, it's a bunch of ice sculpted, whatever.
Right.
But we got in, and it was a
inside.
whole different world. We're like, that was super cool. And then she comes up to me like a week later and goes, you know what I really like and that I want to do more? She's like, what? Just things like this. Just
travel.
random little things. Like it doesn't even have to be like traveling. Like we need a passport and all this stuff. Like just
going
going
somewhere that you haven't been
different.
before.
Like why? Yeah.
It gives you like a new perspective, and it also like it helps you just appreciate like how different everyone really is, and like how
Absolutely.
everyone has like their own ideas that they want to create and like set up, and like you can see it from like someone's like little own shop, like even
Yeah.
just the way they set
We
that up.
we took a trip to New Orleans this past summer, I think. Yeah, this past summer, and just seeing like speaking of design, but how everything is made and produced, how the people interact with everybody, and like compared to here, where this is home, right? It's been home forever. It was just like, wow, cool. The people were amazing. Like so many of them were just so friendly
And it's like
crazy.
it's so refreshing to just like meet a entirely different crowd of people. Like not like the people in Colorado are bad, because like everyone's been super nice, and I'm from Miami. Like, everyone down there sucks.
But just seeing a different type of people from
It's-
somewhere that you're like maybe not used to
Right.
or never been before, you're like, I wonder how they're gonna be, and then next thing you know, they're like,
They're like the nicest people in the world.
but it's cool. Thanks, man. Loved having you.
Oh, okay, yeah, I loved being here. That was awesome.
Dude, that was awesome. So hope we have you again. So
Yeah,
appreciate
let's
it. Thanks,
come down.
man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jaime,
Yeah, of
for
course, man.
being the man on the chair.
Oh, yeah.
And Jamie.
Hi, man, Jamie.
Oh, my gosh.
Cool.